And I'm thrilled to present to you our two outstanding experts, DJ Singley at Mapsys and Cadman Chui at Akasia Cloud. Our team surveyed 40 plus technical decision makers, asking them which areas do they plan to invest in the next 12 months. And here's what we found. As you can see on our data sets here, 34% of them stated that they plan to invest in cloud storage, while 16% stated hybrid cloud, 6% says cloud compute, 6% on-premise compute, and the other bits, as you can see there, is on the data sets. These are really good statistics. Now, Cadman, I have two things, sir. What's your thought on these data? And could you tell us, when is a cloud a better choice than on-premises?
Yeah, so thank you. It's great being here, and thanks for inviting me. It's great to be here with DJ as well. Yeah, the answer usually is like our company, Akasia Cloud, is a software provider. So we have a software as a service solution, which provides forecasting for on-premises to cloud
Mhm.
migrations. So anytime you want to move a workload to the cloud, or even if you're moving from one hypervisor to another on premises, our software helps to kind of forecast what your costs are going to be when you get there before you even move a single workload. So when I look at this data here, it's not very surprising. I mean, cloud storage is a big ticket item. A lot of customers we see want to dip their toe in the cloud and invest in cloud storage because it's easy to get started. And a lot of them use it for kind of an alternative to tape backup as well. So being able to migrate some of their workloads offsite, sometimes in a geographically dispersed pattern, gives them more resilience in terms of being able to back up and restore over their on-premises environments. Um, but overall, which is a better choice, cloud or on-premises? The answer is it really does depend. We have found, or our software has found, that if you're in an environment where you're over provisioned, a lot of on-premises environments are using VMware, for instance, for their compute workloads. And many of the times we find they have a lot of underutilization. So there's over provisioning in terms of a lot of hardware, which really can be cut down. And so if they have that situation in those particular situations where they're over provisioned and underutilized, then there's an
Mhm.
opportunity to right size that environment and push it onto the cloud. And so in those instances, we have found, and some of our customers have found, where they're over provisioned on premises, we're able to right size those workloads in a much better manner to have them fit into the cloud with fewer resources. And that's where the savings are most prominent. And so that is usually the instance where we find that cloud is a better choice than on premises. Otherwise, if they're using their on premises hosts and workloads effectively, where there's not a whole lot of slack in terms of utilization, then they would stay on premises in that fashion.
Great. Thank you so much, Cadman. DJ, what's your thought about this?
Well, I have a lot. I think it's funny, Kevin, when you start out. I'm a technologist, and it depends. And I just think it's so funny because it's always the answer we give to just about most everybody, right? Because it does depend, and it depends on all of your situations and what what you're trying to solve and what business problems you have, right? So I work for Mapsys. We're a nationwide consulting firm. We sell lots of different types of clouds, from the very biggest to the very smallest, and also lots of on-premise hardware, lots of different storage options. Although we're particularly heavy with IBM. So, I have an interesting take, I think, on this too. I do think it's really interesting that the audience say that they're looking at cloud storage. And I think I echo some of Cadman's comments too, is that, wow,
Mhm.
yeah, it's probably a lot of backup that you folks are looking at doing, right? pushing Veeam backups into the cloud or other sources of backups into the cloud to get it off site, right? Maybe sort of, I hate to say this like this, so please bear with me, but I don't know of a better way of saying it, but a sort of a poor man's DR in some aspects, right? Hot site, warm site type of thing, pushing it up into the cloud. But it also reminds me, especially when I look at the next option down below, hybrid cloud storage, right? Hybrids, that means a little bit on-prem, a little bit off-prem. So
Right.
what might that look like? Well, that, I'm not sure if a lot of the audience has spent a lot of time with some of the new enterprise storage products out there, and most of the products do it. IBM does it, NetApp does it, Pure does it, EMC does it, and probably the host of every other storage you'd look at will do this. But if you like, you could take a snapshot of your data on the host or on the storage array locally and push those snapshots up in the cloud for some more security and just to get them off site, so to speak. Now, caution you, the guys, that is not a backup, right? That is not a backup. That is just pushing snapshots into the cloud. If you were to need to use them in the future, you will still need to download them back to your site, or at least to another array of the same capabilities, and then restore those backups. So, I wonder if that has part as part of the answer here. Just looking down, that would make the number one and number two, pretty pretty prevalent, right, with what the audience is thinking. I want to also give a quick shout out back to Cadman, because I think this is really interesting. When I first met Cadman a couple weeks ago, I was actually delighted and shocked. I mean, we certainly have some manner of tools sort of similar to Cadman's that are more vendor specific, right? And of course,
Mhm.
if you're getting the tool from a vendor, you know what it's going to say. It's going to be very favorable to the vendor. So after talking to Cadman, boy, I tell you, I love the idea of your tool, Cadman. I think it's awesome, because I have a lot of customers that ask the same question, and they want to know the answer, right? They want to, they want to go beyond the, oh, it depends. So what is the answer? And I think, after seeing what your tool can do, it's very clear that you can deliver an answer with lots of data for folks to make the right decision for their business, right? So I like that.
Yeah, thanks for the shout out there, DJ. And yeah, our software really is a very broad piece of software. You were mentioning that, hey, there might be some biases in terms of some of the calculators that are out there. Um, Many of the calculators and modelers that are out there stick with sort of one cloud platform, whereas ours has, support for AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, IBM Cloud, and Oracle Cloud, and VMware on top of that, and Nutanix on top of that as well. And they can also analyze your on-prem environment. So really, when we go back to the it depends, the quote unquote it depends, it really does depend on how you're utilized, and if you want to know what your options are, you really need to have something that calculates what your options are across the board, and not just for one or two clouds, or not just for one or two situations. You really need to get a broad set of alternatives so that you can make the most informed decision when it comes down to migrating to whatever the target environment is. And
Yeah.
even if you're really dead set on, let's say you're a Microsoft shop, and I'm going Microsoft no matter what, right? I'm not looking at anything else. I'm not going to go onto the other clouds. No way, no how. We are a Microsoft shop. Well, in that case, it's still worthwhile to look at the broad options, because you're going to be entering into some kind of negotiation at some point, and with Microsoft, and they're going to give you a sort of an idea of what it's going to all cost. And then you want to be in a position to say, hey, we are, internally, you're going to say, yeah, we're going to go with Microsoft no matter what. But you want to have a good idea of what the competition is charging, so that you're in a better negotiating capacity when it comes to your chosen cloud. So that's another use case for
That's
something
a
like
really important point. You don't tell your preferred vendor that you're my preferred vendor no matter what,
that.
because that's
Yeah.
probably not a great negotiating position to be in. That's kind of funny. I'm glad you brought that up. I did want to put one other thought here out for the audience, is that the flash storage at 2%, I think, is very sort of interesting to me, because mostly the arrays that we ship out the door, almost 95, 98% of them of the
Oh.
petabytes we sell are all flash arrays. All flash is here. The spinning disk drive is really taking a back seat these days. And I only really see spinning disk in very large AI or data lakes or lake house type of installations where you have 50 petabytes. And to do that with Flash would be $50 million. Now it's not 50 million, but it'd be a lot. And it just doesn't need the performance, right? So I suspect that when the rest of these folks are talking about, on-prem compute, on-prem storage, on-prem backup, a lot of this is, all flash storage. Maybe not the backup piece, of course, but yeah, I think that's just an interesting point there too. So yeah, good
Hmm.
slide. I like it. I think that was really good insight, Cadman.
All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for sharing your insight on this first data sets of ours. Now let's move on to our next slide. So we reached out to over 300 technical decision makers, to explore how on-premise storage solutions align with their initiatives and projects for the next 12 months. And here's what we've learned. As you can see, our data shows 25% shared its enhanced data security. No surprise there. Usually it's really the top priority for most of them. 24% said it's reducing operational cost. And 21% is stated increase data accessibility or speed. And the other bits of it, like improve data governance, compliance, you can see that on the data sets right here. So the DJ, two questions, sir. This is for you. Does this align to what you see? And when is on premises the better choice?
Yeah, it's funny. I think Cadman and I sometimes can align like with me being more of the on-prem favorite and Cadman looking more of the cloud favored.
Mhm.
But I think as we always talk, we both we both sort of support each other's viewpoints a lot because we have to. That's what our customers are asking us to do. This particular slide, I think, is exactly what you would expect, right? Working with large hospitals, as I often do, large manufacturing firms, state and local government, universities, large AI, players, it's mostly universities. This is what they demand out of their storage or all of their compute environments in general, right? You need to keep things secure, and there's a broad idea that once it leaves your facility that you are not really in charge of the security. Where is that data? It's supposed to be in the Dallas data center. Where is that Dallas data center? Who knows what employees are walking around doing whatever they're doing in your favorite cloud hosting vendor? They're very secure. Don't get me wrong, folks, but this is a little bit of FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and why a lot of these larger organizations, especially, just won't leave on-prem. So security is big. The reduced operational costs, I think, is certainly a good one. I have a very large customer that spends tens of millions of dollars in cloud storage every single year. If you were to put that into their two data centers and replicate between the two data centers, the 5-year cost wouldn't even be $5 million, including running the electricity and the people costs for that particular solution. So there is that as well, right? In some cases, right, an on-prem solution can be much, much, much cheaper. This particular instance, the customer was dealing with a lot of egress charges, and that's why they had tens of millions of dollars worth of charges on their bill. And then lastly, the accessibility and speed. Listen, if you're doing a high performance computing project, if you're doing an AI project with a data lake or a lake house, you're going to need that speed to keep those engines, those compute engines, pumping and pumping out those models, training those models, running whatever simulations you're running. You just can't have it in the cloud unless you put your entire organization in the cloud, and then you might have a very large bill as well. The cool thing though, and again, I'm complimenting Cadman here because I just love this idea, is that if I had that use case and I really needed to know which is better, should I buy all this NVIDIA GPUs and these big IBM storage arrays to handle all my AI data and put it in my data center with my people and the power and cooling cost and all of that? Or should I put it in the cloud, AWS or Azure, IBM Cloud, whatnot, and run all my HPC runs up there? I can't tell you that answer, but you know who can? Cadman can. I think that's quite neat, man, for sure. And I think the rest kind of fall as it may. And I think I want to flip it to Cadman here and just say, Cadman, looking at the answers here, it looks like most of the folks that were sponsored or rather responded here feel like maybe potentially on-prem is the way to go. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, naturally, from a security standpoint, I mean, you don't want to let go of that, right? If you're a bank, if you're something that requires a lot of security, handing it over into the cloud, as you were saying, DJ, might be an issue, right? And that's totally understandable. Now, if you're like a mid-sized shop, a small to medium-sized shop, and maybe you don't have that many resources to do penetration testing and perform all that security stuff. So, or maybe it's not your expertise because you've only got a handful of IT guys. And so in those instances, it might be better to consider the cloud because uh, while the cloud has a bigger attack surface and more attack vectors that can attack it because it's open and it's public, they also benefit from having the aggregate experience of security. So, if they've been attacked before, if one segment of their customers have been attacked before, but you haven't, then you get the benefit the next round or the next iteration of their version control, or for their hypervisor or for their infrastructure management solution,
Mhm.
to fill those holes faster than if you were to do it on premises. So again, it does depend, but for the larger customers, I can see why they would want to keep everything on prem. I certainly would as well. Now, to your other point, DJ, about egress and how those can become very costly over
Yeah.
time, especially if you're in a DR or an HA environment where you're replicating data all the time. Our software has actually found in some cases, certain clouds don't charge for egress you're if you're replicating between the cloud platform's data centers. So a lot of our clients don't take that into account. Networking usually falls to the wayside anyway, network costs. But if they don't take that into account, then you're missing out on opportunities where some cloud platform providers aren't charging for the egress. And so therefore you might be able to save on that if you're in a big HA or DR or content distribution environment where you're doing a lot of networking back and forth between geographically dispersed areas in the cloud. So my 2 cents there to add on to what you were saying about network charges.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I like that you said that. It also kind of strikes me that potentially that somebody listening to our conversation might say, well, listen, guys, I can think of a lot of on-prem installations that have been hacked. Sony potentially or off-prem. In the clouds. Snowflake is a recent big one, right? There's no real clear answer, and I'd say, these larger organizations, the delineation for them is that if it's on-prem and their security team is handling it, they know where they fell down. If it's off-prem, there's a lot of ambiguity. Who fell down? Was it us as we were managing the systems off-premise or in the cloud? Or was it the cloud vendor's negligence? It's a much harder question to answer once there is an incident. And unfortunately, us here at Mapsys, we have responded to quite a few incidents over the years now. These, especially since COVID started, I feel like at this point we're probably up to 12 different mitigations with varying customers, and it's tough. It's heart-wrenching to see these companies affected so broadly with these attacks. And it's always a hard thing to do to get in there and get them back up and running, whether that's in the cloud or on premise with their own equipment. So yeah, security, real big.
Oh.
I'm no wonder it's number one, right? So,
Thank you, gentlemen. So we have a question from the audience. If my
mhm.
system is locked up, such as in a ransomware attack, will I have access to my files in the cloud if I am off-site, or do they get quarantined until I can prove my site is clean?
You know, as someone who's done this, and Cadman, I want you to answer too, but we have done this a few times with, you know, with different customers. So yes, the answer is yes. If you have your files off-site and they have not been encrypted, so most of the things that we look at, they're ransomware attacks, so everything is encrypted. Yes, you have access to them, right? You better be careful the access you do with them. And I would call an expert to help you decide, are these safe to touch? Will they re-encrypt themselves, the data set at a later date, if I just cavalierly go out there and start grabbing them and using them? The second point I want to make is really very critical. Once a ransomware attack happens, you need to pause for just a second. Don't just go start restoring systems. You need to think it through, potentially get some help. Additionally, the FBI typically wants to see that ransomware data set. They want to do forensic analysis on it, et cetera, et cetera. Now, our and cooperation with all this ends sort of at that forensics point. That's up to the FBI and other security companies. Our contribution to getting our customers back up and running is typically really just getting their infrastructure back up and running, identifying points in time that ransomware did not exist, and then restoring from it. There are also products out there, and I'd be happy to show customers or clients out there what products could help you mitigate this ransomware threat. There's lots of products, some on primary storage, some dealing with backup, and they all have their place, I think, in your toolbox. But broadly speaking again, I think it's always only a matter of time till everyone will eventually get hit in some form or fashion. And you need a plan for that. Like when they get through all of these safeguards and they finally hit your data, what are you going to do? Who are you going to call? How are you going to react? What tools do you have in place to help get your business back up and running? And again, a company like mine and Cadman certainly can help you with that. So I don't know, Cadman, what do you think about this question?
I'm dating myself, but when you said who are you going to call, I was going to say Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters.
Although there's a new Ghostbusters movie out, I think now.
There is. Oh yeah.
There's been a couple, so maybe I'm not that old. But I agree with everything you just said. Like Akasia is more software based on for cost modeling, forecasting, simulation, and analysis. So we don't really delve too much into security and backups and RTO and RPO, but there are instances where, let's say, a customer wants to do like a hot backup site. They're on premises and they want to use the cloud as a hot backup site. So they want to replicate some of their workloads over compute, network storage. They want to replicate it over, but they want to do it in a consolidated manner, right? So they don't want to replicate a one for one because it's going to cost a lot, right? And the backup site's not always going to be running. It's going to be running less than 1% of 1% of the time. And so they feel that, they could use our software to help them right size their on-premises environment into a hot backup site on the cloud, which will provide them with the recovery point and recovery time objectives that you were saying, DJ, because you don't want to be too real time, because if you get ransomware, for instance, it's going to replicate the ransomware into the cloud as well. And so you need to find, like you were saying, DJ, the point in time before the ransomware was injected, so that you can roll back to a state, so the last known safe state. And so our software can help with the consolidation piece, but you still have to worry about the proper recovery time objectives, recovery point objectives, and the rollbacks and the number of rollback instances for those recovery states.
Interesting. Yeah, I like that. Actually, I have one other comment real quickly here. I did mention poor man's DR earlier, and maybe I sort of want to expand upon this idea a little bit, Cadman, especially with you, right? And you and I haven't, I think, ever talked about this before in the past, or maybe we have. I just don't remember. But so what I mean by poor man's DR, right, is when you replicate your backups off-site or part of your infrastructure off-site. It could be one of the large clouds, which a lot of the time I frame large clouds, such as the ones we're talking about, the Googles and the IBMs and Oracles of the world, as a self-service cloud, right? You log in and you do the work, or you pay my firm to log in and press the buttons for you, which is fine, right? Works great. Or you could even use a smaller bespoke cloud. I hate calling them bespoke clouds, but when you look at the size of Azure and AWS these days, everything is smaller. I mean, they're enormous, right? Even the next two, IBM and Google, way, 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 way smaller, and Oracle, of course, way smaller. But so these bespoke clouds, right? The idea is, again, if you get your data offsite to one of them, right, via Veeam or storage replication or a host of other ways of getting it offsite, you have the idea, the idea of this poor man DR where you don't exactly pay for reserve capacity on those clouds, whether they're the big ones or the little ones. And if you do have an emergency, you're just hoping that there is capacity there for you to bring up your workload, your production workload. Listen, if you don't pay for it and you need it in a pinch, it may not be there. And if it's not there, then sorry guys, the paying customers get that capacity, the ones who've reserved it. But I think that for smaller customers that need to get data offsite, that just don't have the budgets to pay for reserve capacity on these clouds, just getting them offsite is, I mean, that's 50% of the battle. The next 50% of the battle is eventually paying for reserve capacity so it's there when you need it. I don't know, Cadman, you probably haven't heard me say that before in the past. What do you think? Is that
Yeah,
interesting
no,
to you?
totally makes sense, right? I mean, there's budgetary requirements and all that kind of good stuff. I mean, if you want to just get your files and data offsite and you don't need the reserve capacity to run a hot DR backup, then that's another level of RTO and RPO, right? I mean, you get different levels of RTO and RPO requirements depending on the situation. And again, it goes back to it depends on what the client's requirements are.
That's right.
There's, the different levels that I've seen in the past are sort of the
Hey
tape
guys, a
backup,
gentle
right?
reminder. Time check, 2 more minutes for this slide.
Okay.
Sure.
I'm gonna shut up soon. So there's kind of the three levels in my mind. There's the poor man's backup, which is kind of like your alternative to the tape backup. Just put the data into the cloud, no workloads, no CPU, just the data, right?
Mhm.
And then you're gonna have to restore it. So that's gonna take you time, right? So
Yeah.
your downtime is gonna be higher in that situation. There's the hot DR site where you're replicating everything over as a workload and with storage, where you can run the workload if you need to, kind of like a failover. And then there's HA, which is I'm replicating everything over in real time. It can switch over within, seconds kind of thing. So those are the
Yeah.
three levels that we see. It's going to depend on what you need as an organization.
You got it. And the cost goes like this as you go to
Yeah,
the
exactly.
level.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for answering that question on behalf of the audience. He said thank you. And they're planning for a code dark 30 days plus downtime for a health system, just to give you a heads up. Now,
Interesting.
yeah, all right. Now let's move on to our next slide. Lastly, we've compiled data from more than 40 plus technical decision makers across various industries about their priorities for cloud and on premises technology in the coming year. And here's what we've discovered, 11% of them stated hybrid cloud, 9% shared migrating system to the cloud, and 6% said purchasing on-premises storage. As you can see, analytics here really plays a large percentage, which is 16%. I'll pass this over to Cadman. Um, Two things. What do you think about this data? And what are some proven approaches to always select the best option?
Yeah, so I mean, analytics is not surprisingly there because you can, I mean, host that on the cloud and you can get feedback right away as to what the data is telling you. We mainly play at Akasia Cloud. We mainly play in the sort of migration, so the hybrid cloud migration and cloud cost optimization. And so we're sort of the 0 day effect. Before you migrate anything, before you move a single workload, our
Mhm.
mantra is you better do the proper analysis before you do anything. Because the worst thing you could have happen is, let's roll back 10 years ago where everybody was cloud first. Let's just move everything to the cloud. It's going to be cheaper, guys. And then they did that and it wasn't cheaper. And then DJ's smiling because he remembers
Oh, yeah.
the CFO would come call up the CTO and say, WTH, man, why is everything costing 3 times as much? You told me this was going to save us money. And that's because the tools didn't exist back then to do the proper analysis, right? But the tools exist today. So I think the industry as a whole has kind of learned. And so the first thing that needs to be done when you're moving anything, whether you're migrating systems to the cloud, whether you're right sizing your existing on premises, if you're moving a workload, you got to do the right analysis first. And Excel spreadsheets are not enough. I can't emphasize this enough. Like there's still so many organizations that says, I'm going to do this myself. I've got 5,000 VMs. I'm going to do it on an Excel spreadsheet. I've done this, by the way. I used to work for a cloud platform provider. I've done this. It's not an easy thing to do, and you're going to get it wrong. And as soon as it's going to take you an inordinate amount of time just to enumerate the number of instances and the prices of those instances on the cloud. And by the time you're done enumerating, the price is going to change, which means your analysis is going to have to change. So you're going to be an endless loop of not keeping up with all the updates that occur with pricing and the different selections that are out there. So if you got to take anything away from this slide, before you migrate a single workload, you got to use software to do the analysis right from the get-go so that you make the right decisions in terms of where to move it, making the right decisions on what the options are that are out there, and making sure that you don't miss any hidden costs that you may overlook if you're doing it on a manual basis.
Thank you. Thank you, Cadman. DJ, what's your thought?
Well, clearly on-prem is better then. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I think what you're getting from both Cadman and I is that, yeah, there, it really depends. I'll tell you, if Cadman and I today decided to leave our jobs and go start a cloud company or start a new company doing anything, we're not buying hardware, at least day one. We're going to start everything in the cloud, right? It's just easier.
Yeah.
But barring that, right, I do think that this is a really interesting slides. Analytics is certainly the easy one, the snowflakes of the world. You throw your data up there and you do some amount of analytics and other value creation with that data. But I also think that machine learning at 2% down below, I think that's going to change drastically here in the coming 5 years. I'm working with multiple financial companies and other types of firms on operationalizing AI. And again, a lot of it is in the cloud. A lot of it is using the same data sets that analytics are using, and we're injecting these AIs into their workflow throughout the organization. And I think that's a really big one that's going to be coming up. I think when we do the same questionnaire next year, you folks will see that number jump up a lot too. And again,
Yeah.
not every customer can do it all in the cloud. I think it's uniquely tailored for the cloud, right? AI is hard and it's changing a lot every day. It's very different. I have some customers, although granted they're enormous, DoD contractors, that type of thing, that absolutely cannot at all put anything in the cloud. In fact, most of their stuff is even air gapped, like physically air gapped. So that just won't work. That's a big time order right there for on-premise computing for sure. And we'll certainly take it any day of the week. But yeah, analytics is a big deal. I like how Cadman was talking about his software again, helping you make that decision, and because some of these things are it's just so hard to understand and figure out. And what he said about you're going to get it wrong.
Yep.
Listen, I do this as a career, and I get it wrong too, right? So, I think your software, Cadman, is just the bee's knees. So I love the idea of it for sure.
Perfect.
Thanks, GJ.
Well, oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Oh, yeah. Well, I know that this is really going to be an exciting event. So, well, are we ready to the next part of the webinar?
Are you saying that Cadman and I are long-winded?
No, you guys are you guys are amazing, actually. And I think we'll probably need more time to discuss it further. There's a lot of things, related to cloud versus on-prem storage that we can uncover together and we can share it with broader audiences. But, we only have limited time. So are
I
we ready to move on to the next part? To our expert, DJ and Cadman. As we explore cloud and on-premises storage solutions, it's pretty clear that each has strengths, they have its own strength, that kind of thing. But I'd love to get your expert opinion on the overall topic. What do you think? You know, let's start with DJ.
Sure. Yeah. Honestly, this is something we talk about a lot.
Yeah.
I think it was a great topic. I think this is something that all of our customers and clients struggle with
Mm.
every year, whether they decide they need some more cloud storage, cloud compute, or some more on-prem infrastructure to fit their business needs, right? So I think this was a very good topic. I think it's timely too. And honestly, I did not realize that Cadman was out there with this kind of a software package. So he and I have already talked about a couple of potential uses in my clients just to
Oh,
find the right solution for them, because otherwise we'll just be spinning in circles, I think, a little bit trying to figure out what to do. Now, again, it can't work in all areas. Again, we have some very large customers, hospitals, defense contractors, those type of folks. They just cannot touch the cloud with a 10-foot pole, and that's fine. They have a particular use case that doesn't fit everyone. So, Kevin,
right.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you wholeheartedly there, DJ. You actually mentioned a scenario earlier where, if you're a smaller shop, you're gonna start you're gonna start on the cloud, right?
yeah,
Greenfield type of environments. I'm not gonna go out and buy a rack of servers, right? I mean, software companies used to do that. But everything's done in the cloud. Even our software was built and it is hosted in the cloud. We don't have servers, right? For smaller companies, absolutely. For larger companies, which require security, as you were saying, DJ, agree wholeheartedly. I mean, defense contractors, government agencies, certain things, just like you want to be able to control all the security yourself, hire the right and the best people to manage that. And so in those cases, on premises might be the right choice, right? And then finally, you might end up in a hybrid environment where you keep the secure stuff on premises and you move some of the not so vital stuff off premises into the cloud.
yeah.
Awesome.